Hello everyone and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The sky above Los Angeles was a bruised purple, heavy with the promise of rain that never seemed to arrive. The metropolis sprawled under it, a dazzling tangle of ambition and tragedy, where dreams were created and died simultaneously. Luna Nozawa stood on the edge of her universe, peering out the window of her little sterile holding cell at the county jail. The glass was thick and stained with the fingerprints of many others who had stood in her place, their aspirations pressing against the unyielding surface. She did not cry. She hadn't sobbed in weeks, since the night everything fell apart. Her hands, formerly smooth and adorned with exquisite jewelry, were now bare and her nails had been chewed down to jagged edges. The orange jumpsuit stretched loosely across her body, in stark contrast to the fitted gown she used to wear, which made her feel invincible. In her thoughts she could still hear her mother's shrill and angry voice. "How could you do this, Luna? How could you betray everyone?" The words cut deeper than any sword, causing invisible wounds. Luna did not have an answer then, and she does not have one today. The truth was a twisted mess, a web of decisions and mistakes that had brought her to this point. She hadn't intended for things to get so out of control. She hadn't meant to hurt anyone, especially Bill and Will Spencer, the two men who had impacted her life in ways she could never have imagined. But intent was meaningless in a society that evaluated you by your actions, and Luna's actions had led her here, awaiting a transfer to a place she could only conceive in her wildest nightmares. The door to her cage clanged open, sending echoes across the concrete walls. A guard stood in the doorway, face expressionless, eyes devoid of pity. "Nozawa," he said, his voice flat. "Time to go." She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Where?" she inquired, knowing full well that the response would be general. They never were. "Doesn't matter," he said, pushing for her to come forward. "Hands out." She stretched her wrists, and the shackles snapped around them. The metal felt heavier than she recalled. Or perhaps it was simply the weight of everything else crushing down on her. She followed the guard down a succession of passageways, each more claustrophobic than the last, until they arrived at a loading dock with a black van waiting. The words "Department of Corrections" were stenciled on the side in startling white against the dark paint. Luna's gut knotted as she climbed inside, the door slamming shut behind her with finality that resonated in her bones. The van started, and Los Angeles began to fade away. She pressed her face against the small barred glass, watching the city lights fade into streaks of gold and red. She thought about Bill, his hard expression melting only when he looked at her, his faith in her unshakable until it wasn't. She remembered Will, his easy smile and reckless charisma, and how he'd always made her believe she could be more than she was. They were both gone now, their horror and treachery imprinted on her memory like a scar. Bill Spencer sat in his office at Spencer Publications, the empire he'd established through brutal precision and unwavering determination. The room was a testament to his accomplishment, with polished mahogany, floor-to-ceiling windows, and awards on the shelves. However, tonight it felt like a mausoleum. He slumped back in his chair, leaving an untouched glass of whiskey on the desk in front of him. The news of Luna's relocation hit him like a freight train, sending him reeling in ways he had never imagined possible. He had trusted her. That was the part that hurt the most. Bill Spencer didn't trust easily. Life had taught him better. But Luna had gotten past his barriers. She'd came to him as an intern, bright-eyed and eager, with a quiet power that reminded him of someone he couldn't identify. She'd grown to be more than just an employee. She had become family, a surrogate daughter in a society when his own children were frequently treated as strangers. He saw potential in her, a spark that could have illuminated the world. And then she had betrayed him. The circumstances remained hazy, including a labyrinth of corporate espionage and stolen secrets that had cost Spencer Publications millions. Luna had been caught in possession of classified documents, her fingerprints found on files she had no right to access. She claimed she was set up, that someone else was behind the leak, but the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, security footage, and bank transactions all point to her. Bill wanted to believe her, fought to believe her, but the truth was cold, unyielding, and refused to bend to his will. He grabbed the whiskey glass, his hand quivering slightly. "Damn it, Luna," he said, barely audible. "Why?" Across town, Will Spencer was dealing with his own issues. He sat in a dingy bar on the outskirts of the city, where the lights were dark and the customers didn't ask questions. His phone rang on the counter, indicating a series of missed calls from his father, but he ignored them. He didn't want to talk to Bill or hear the displeasure in his voice. Will had plenty of his own to carry. Luna had been his friend, confidant, and the one person who appeared to grasp the weight of being a Spencer without the burden of expectation. They'd spent late evenings discussing everything and nothing, music, dreams, and their chaotic lives. He'd never considered her a threat, never dreamed she was capable of the horrors she was accused of. But the proof was unmistakable, and it had shattered something in him. He emptied his bottle and motioned for another, his mind spinning. Luna's history had always been shrouded in mystery, a patchwork of half-truths. She grew up on the outskirts of Los Angeles, nurtured by a single mother who worked too hard and loved too deeply. There were signs of struggle and secrets she kept hidden, but Will never pressured her for information. Maybe he should have. Perhaps if he had known more, he could have predicted this outcome. The van proceeded for hours, the road extending into an infinite ribbon of blackness. Luna sat quietly, hands clutched tightly in her lap. The other inmates in the van were strangers, their faces stony and inscrutable. She wondered where they were heading, and what type of location could be so secretive that no one would tell her the name. The name secret prison conjured up thoughts of frigid cells and never-ending interrogations, a place where hope died. She attempted to brush the thoughts away, but they stuck to her like a damp rag. Her thoughts traveled to the night when everything went wrong. She'd been working late at Spencer Publications, and the office was quiet except for the buzz of the air conditioner. She'd been tasked with sorting papers for an imminent merger, which required access to confidential information. She hadn't given it much attention at the moment, seeing it as simply another duty in a lengthy list. But then she discovered the email, stashed in a section she wasn't meant to access. It came from an anonymous account and addressed to her, with instructions to copy and deliver specific files to a drop location. The message promised money, enough to transform her life, but it also included a threat. "Refuse and we will ruin you." She had deleted the email, her hands shaking, but it was too late. Someone was watching, waiting for her to make a mistake. The next day, security invaded her workstation, pulling files and laptops with grim expressions. Luna attempted to explain, to inform them about the email, but no one listened. The email had vanished, erased from the system as if it never been. She had been framed, set up by someone who understood exactly how to make her appear guilty. The van hit a bump, bringing her back to the present. She looked at the soldier seated across from her, his gaze locked on the floor. "How much longer?" she inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. He did not look up. "Long enough." She closed her eyes and leaned back against the rough bench. She remembered her mother, who hadn't paid her a visit since she was arrested. Her mother saw the betrayal as worse than any prison sentence. Luna had always been her mother's pride, her reason to persevere through years of hardship. Now she was a disgrace, with her name whispered in shame. Luna wondered if her mother would ever forgive her, or if she would even get the opportunity to ask. Back in Los Angeles, Bill was pacing around his office, the whiskey glass forgotten. He'd spent hours going through the case files, looking for anything that could prove Luna's innocence. He didn't know why he was doing it. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was the nagging feeling that he had overlooked something. The evidence was airtight, yet it was too perfect and clean. Bill had been playing the game long enough to understand that real life was messier than that. He took up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It rang 3 times before a harsh voice responded. "Yeah. Justin, this is Bill Spencer," he remarked with a clipped tone. "I need a favor." Justin Barber, a private investigator known for uncovering information that others couldn't, listened as Bill described the scenario. "You're asking me to stick my neck out for a girl who's already been convicted," Justin replied, his voice doubtful. "Why?" "Because I don't believe she did it," Bill answered. "And if she didn't, someone else is out there laughing while she pays the price." Justin paused for a second. "All right," he finally said. "But this won't be cheap or easy." If she has been transferred to a black site, we are dealing with serious players. Are you ready for what that could mean? Bill held the phone more tightly. Do it. Meanwhile, Will was stumbling out of the bar, the night air biting at his skin. He'd drunk too much, yet not enough to relieve the pain in his chest. He took out his phone and browsed through old texts from Luna, each one a reminder of what he had lost. There was one from a month ago. A simple thanks for being you with a smile. He had laughed it off at first, but it suddenly felt like a lifeline. He typed a message with awkward fingers on the screen. I don't know what to believe anymore, but I miss you. He stared at it for a long time before deleting it. She was gone, transported to some secret hellhole, and he had no idea where to begin looking for her. The concept made him feel helpless, something he detested. The secret prison was not what Luna had envisaged. It was not a massive fortress or a concealed bunker. It was a massive, unremarkable structure in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by miles of barren desert. The air was dry and oppressive, and the heat made your skin seem as if it were shrinking. She was escorted through a succession of checkpoints, each more closely guarded than the last, before being placed in a cell that was both sterile and suffocating. The walls were white, the floor gray, and the only furnishings were a small cot and a metal toilet. There was no window, no clock, no nothing to indicate the passing of time. Luna sat on the cot, her hands still bound, and attempted to control her breathing. She'd heard rumors about places like this, unofficial facilities where people vanished without a trace. The thought made her chest constrict, but she refused to succumb to panic. She had no idea how long she had been there when the door opened again. A woman walked in, her presence dominating despite her simple gray suit. Her hair was pushed back into a tight bun, and her eyes were sharp and focused. Luna Nozawa, she said, her voice silky and frigid. You've caused quite a stir. Luna straightened and met the woman's gaze. I didn't do what they say I did. The woman tilted her head, a small smile on her lips. That's what everyone says. But you aren't here because of something you did or did not do. You're here because you can help. Luna's blood turned cold. Useful for what? The woman did not respond. Instead, she turned and walked away, the door closing behind her with a resounding thump. Luna glanced at where she had stood, her mind racing. Useful. The word rang in her thoughts like an unfit puzzle piece. She knew she'd been framed, but this was different, something bigger. And whatever it wasn't over. Luna was unsure whether the days had evolved into weeks or months. Time in the underground prison was a fluid concept, measured only by the regularity of meals and the odd visit from the woman in the gray suit. Luna learned that her name was Agent Kessler, and she was a member of the Oversight Committee, a secretive organization that appeared to operate outside of the law. Kessler never revealed what they wanted from Luna, only that she was being evaluated. Luna fought to cling on to herself, remembering who she was before everything. She reflected on Bill and Will, and the life she had left behind. She wondered if they were still looking for her or had given up, sure of her guilt. The prospect of their displeasure weighed on her every day, more than the cuffs or the concrete walls. Back in Los Angeles, Bill and Justin were putting together their own puzzle. Justin had discovered a trail of encrypted communications that led to a shell firm, linked to a competing corporation. The deeper they dug, the more hazardous things grew. Bill didn't care. He had already lost too much: trust, faith, and his surrogate daughter. He was not going to let the truth slip. Will, meanwhile, was pursuing his own leads, motivated by a combination of remorse and desperation. He tracked down one of Luna's former co-workers, a jittery man named Ethan, who had left Spencer Publications shortly after her arrest. Ethan was guarded, but when pressed, he admitted to seeing someone tinkering with Luna's computer the night before the controversy surfaced. It wasn't much, but it was adequate to keep Will going. Luna was becoming increasingly distraught in prison. The loneliness, the uncertainty, Kessler's continual probing. It was all too much. She had stopped eating, and her body was becoming weaker with each passing day. But her mind was still bright and fighting. She began to see similarities in Kessler's queries, which hinted at a wider strategy. They sought something from her that she didn't even realize she possessed. One night, while she lay on her cot, staring at the ceiling, she noticed a faint tapping on the wall. She believed she was imagining it, but it came back, intentional and rhythmic. She tapped back, her heart racing. Someone was on the other side. For the first time in months she felt hopeful. The tapping became a code for communicating with the prisoner in the adjacent cell. Marcus, a former hacker, has gotten caught up in the same web as Luna. He informed her about the Oversight Committee, their experiments with media control, and their aspirations to manipulate global markets. Luna was a pawn in their scheme, a scapegoat to take the blame while they pulled the strings. Marcus' remarks gave Luna a sense of purpose. She was no longer a victim, she was a fighter. She began to pay greater attention to Kessler, memorizing every word and gesture. She began eating again, forcing herself to remain strong. If there was a way out, she would find it. In Los Angeles, Bill and Will were closing in. Justin had discovered a name. Victor Crane, a mysterious individual with ties to the Oversight Committee. Crane had orchestrated the frame-up, using Luna to divert attention away from his own business. Bill confronted him at a gala, his voice low and threatening. "Where is she?" he demanded. Crane smirked, unaffected. "You are pursuing ghosts, Spencer. Luna is gone, and you will not get her back." However, Bill was not alone. Will had been working with Ethan, who had finally admitted his own role in the plot. He'd been pressured into planting evidence on Luna's computer. With Ethan's testimony and Justin's evidence, they had enough to approach the authorities, or at least someone who could assist. The pieces were falling together, but time was running out. Luna's mails to Marcus had been found, and Kessler was tightening the screws. She was transferred to a different cell with no neighbors and no possibility of interaction. But Luna refused to give up. She'd studied and seen too much. She scratched inscriptions into the walls as a record of what she knew, hoping that someone might uncover them one day. The desert prison was silent the night it happened. A power loss left the facility in darkness, and during the pandemonium, a crew infiltrated the fence. Bill and Will had pulled every thread, asked for every favor to make it happen. They had no idea if Luna was still alive, but they wouldn't go without her. Luna could hear the bustle, shouts, and gunfire ringing down the halls. She paused at the jail door, her heart beating. When it finally swung open, she saw Bill's face, older and more worn than she recalled, but still there. Will was behind him, his eyes wide with relief. "Luna," Bill exclaimed, his voice breaking. "We're getting you out." She nodded, too flustered to talk. As they hurried down the dimly lit halls, Luna understood something. This was not the end. The Oversight Committee was still out there, and they weren't going to quit. However, for the first time in months, she was not alone. She had Bill and Will, and that could be enough to keep fighting. They emerged into the desert night, the stars shining brightly above them. Luna took a big inhale, the air keen and clear. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing. She was not going back. Not to prison, not to falsehoods, and not to the person she used to be. She was Luna Nozawa, and she was ready to reclaim her life.